Well, I kind of buried it, and I didn't tell people about it until I told a few select close friends over the years. But last year I decided to go public with my circle of friends. The reactions from my female friends were all incredibly supportive and empathetic, and even though they couldn't change anything, they could at least give me an emotional hug, if you like. My male friends, some of them took a while to understand that I was being serious, the seriousness of the event. Some of them laughed it off. A couple dropped me like a stone, which I was incredibly hurt and angry about.
So the childhood experiences that would relate most to trauma would be abusive situations, and that relates to sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect. Many parents have themselves had very difficult experiences that they haven't resolved, and they can be unwittingly passing on the negative effects to their children. For the complex trauma survivor who's experienced interpersonal trauma within a relationship, often it's very difficult to talk about.
Victims need to be believed, they need to be comforted. Friends who you wouldn't expect to come out of the woodwork have been incredibly supportive in their own ways, and so that's got me through.
Well, certainly what helped was having people who could be there, and certainly as a child I'd been very alone. I didn't have an adult who was there to support me, who could help me make sense of what I didn't even have the words for.
So that's when we see many people who've survived this sort of very severe trauma and abuse still operating in that survival mode. Made perfect sense and was very adaptive at the time of the original trauma, but sets up potential great difficulties.
It can be really challenging for supporters and carers. It can be really heartbreaking to watch someone struggle. It can be really heartbreaking to watch someone lose their way and get into their coping strategies and get lost in that.
I was so reactive to my life rather than choosing what I wanted to do with my life. And my reactions were based on moments in time from my past. And that, I wasn't aware of that.
We all want to feel safe and good in our bodies, and if we haven't learnt and we're not able to manage that from the legacy of our own childhoods, it will be sought in other forms. So it's very important to realise that it's easy to blame the substance, blame the alcohol, blame the overwork, but what we need to do with complex trauma is recognise the purpose that those activities are providing.
There are people who find themselves in very complex situations with highly traumatised people who can sometimes feel burdened, overwhelmed by what they're trying to manage, who might not themselves have got the full story of what's happened to the particular person that they're caring for. They should also seek support, and very important to know the limitations and the boundaries around that relationship, and not to feel responsible for 100% of the issues.
The core principles of being trauma-informed are fivefold: safety, trustworthiness, choice, collaboration and empowerment. When those partners and supporters understand trauma-informed principles and they recognise the problems they're experiencing in relationship are the legacy of complex trauma, there's ways of relating that can assist and smooth that and to minimise the damage of relational fallout.
Having those few friends who were able to be there and able to reach out to me at a time when I couldn't reach out to anyone, when I was so isolated, a time when I couldn't pick up the phone and call anyone, when I couldn't leave the house.
It's being there and letting them know you're there and being in a loving, non-judgmental place. It's like, don't give up on people. Sometimes you reach out and sometimes you don't, but it's good just knowing somebody is there anyway.
In the relationship, the person might be very insecure. They can still have great difficulties in trusting in believing that someone would like them or that someone would be there for them.
It is possible to recover from even severe forms of trauma and abuse. It's possible for people to learn to do that, to experience a sense of connection that previously they thought was unattainable for them. And best practice trauma treatment is very much sending out a positive message that recovery is possible. Positive relational experiences build the brain, realign disrupted neural pathways in beneficial ways, not only for trauma survivors, but for all of us with general wellbeing.
To people whose loved ones are going through this, I'd say, while you probably want to dive in there and take that pain away for them, you can't. They have to do the journey, and all you can do is stand and witness and love and encourage and be a constant present in their life and be a reflective surface and reflect who you see that person as.
If the underlying trauma isn't addressed, people can be easily triggered down the track by something quite innocuous. Someone will say, well, how could that possibly upset someone? But a smallest trigger that's a reminder of an unprocessed trauma can take the person back into these strong biological responses that impair daily functioning.
Even through my marriage, I saw only in hindsight how my husband would ask me a question and I wouldn't be able to share it, whether it be emotional. If it was emotional, I wouldn't be able to say anything. I'd be very quiet. I'd shut down and go, what's wrong? And I'd say, nothing, nothing's wrong. And I couldn't speak. And he'd say, you have to tell me. And I'm like, no, nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong, and I'd be frozen.
It means really being in the moment with a person, being non-judgmental, validating what they're saying, showing you've heard what they've said. Even if you feel unable to deal with it, might be just, look, I'm really sorry to hear that.
A lot of survivors get on the internet these days and educate themselves. And I think you can do a lot of making sense of and understanding that way. But as far as healing is about having a new experience, the brain changes through having a new experience. And I can only have a new experience in relationship with someone, because I was wounded, for example, in relationship to someone. And it's forming all those new neural linkages around relationship, around safety, around trust. Relationships can be different, and the brain changes around that.
You know, I had a few friends who had the capacity to really be there in an unconditional way and who were able to be by my side, and even when they didn't know what to say, just to say, I don't know what to say, but just to be there, often in the most simple ways.
And I changed how I functioned in relationship and did some really good repair work. And I have been married now for 3 years and with my beautiful husband for 9 years. And it is the first relationship I've had where control and power over is not a feature. So I now know what a healthy, equal relationship looks and feels like. It was a long time to get there.
I mean, ASCA runs care and supporter workshops. It could be going to a workshop to get educated about what's happening for this person that I love, that I want to support, what's going on for them. Get educated to get more understanding. And it might be that you could do with, you know, your own counselling to be supported, because then if we're supported as a carer, if we make sure we're really supported, then we'll be able to be there for that person.
And as my gorgeous husband says to me even now sometimes, honey, it might feel that big for you inside, but what you're feeling inside, I'm not seeing that as much on the outside. You're doing okay, you're doing really good. And I've learned that some of those big feelings inside, they're not actually my reality now.